At the very end of my month of sabbatical in February, I did a 3-day silent retreat at the New Camaldi Hermitage south of Big Sur. Now, it was scheduled to be a 5-day retreat at the very beginning of my month of sabbatical. But, we had this little problem with, blessing and problem of rain this year. And because the driveway of the monastery is actually right where the landslide several years ago closed Route 1, and it remains closed, it was not a site that I wanted to travel there, so I ended up changing my plans. About 24 hours in, I was thinking to myself, oh, thank goodness I'm not doing 5 days of this. Mindfulness is all very well and good, but this is a lot. However, by the last night, I was regretful that I wasn't going to get those other 2 days right away. I'll get them sometime. Because I was so grateful for the clarity that I felt coming out of that space of intention. I felt so healed from what had been a small oasis in a teeming decade. Mindfulness is a term we hear a lot now, often in terms of a call to become more aware of our own lives. In the last 10 years, we have seen the ways that the worlds of the scientific and the spiritual and the psychological have come together, and this area of mindfulness is one place where that intersection has been very busy. Just as psychology and spirituality have become increasingly intertwined, especially in addressing and dealing with and offering tools for the incredible levels of anxiety and concern that are rising in our world today. What's interesting is that more and more people are turning to the tools of mindfulness. And like any other popularized trend, sometimes we get both good truths and some misinformation. Because sometimes we think about mindfulness only as a way to escape from that in the world that we find hard to bear, while in fact, what the new science, what the new spiritual practice, what the new psychology is telling us is that it actually is a tool to allow us to live more fully in this world so blessed and also so broken, of which we are now a part. When we are mindful, we learn, just as people have learned throughout the most difficult situations throughout time, that something of beauty is always there, present with us, even in the most difficult situations. As we heard the words of wisdom this morning, you saw some of the little snapshots that are one of my mindfulness practice. I just take pictures wherever I am of things of beauty that I encounter in my days. And because I was moving around a little bit more in February, I saw some more incredibly beautiful things. But it was something that I do, and I noticed that sometimes it's just the way a crack is in a sidewalk, or the way a leaf has dropped onto our patio, or a particular expression in the turkeys' faces that day. There's always the gracious curve of a tree, and by the way, one of our most beautiful trees has opened its blossoms for you this morning. Please make sure you see it before you leave. Those of you online, we will post a picture next week. It's the glisten of a worm wriggling across the road, the savor of a food prepared with love and care. When we are mindful, we notice the expansiveness of those around us, the birds, the clouds, the stars, the people that we love, the people that we don't love. And we can see more clearly the reality of our own lives. Now, Sharon Salzberg is a mindfulness teacher and author and also a Buddhist practitioner, and one who has been very influential in Unitarian Universalism over the last few decades, says mindfulness helps us get better at seeing the difference between what's happening and the stories we tell ourselves about what's happening. Stories that get in the way of direct experience. Often such stories treat a fleeting state of mind as if it were our entire and permanent self. What I appreciate about today's call to worship is, of course, the depth and wisdom of the people that come church here with us all the time. I also loved the fact that each story was unique, and yet there were common chords that ran among them. So many people here, I know, are trying to become more conscious of how to live in these times, and I think that's a hope that this community offers. And it's my goal that in these coming months and years, we'll find different ways and new ways to practice together. Watch for the chance to look and take a journey together through Sharon Salzberg's book, Real Happiness, on Sunday afternoons in May and June coming up. Back to my too long, too short retreat. On the last morning, the sun broke through the clouds, and there was one of the most gorgeous rainbows I've ever witnessed. And I vowed to continue holding on to this thread of mindfulness that I've been reminded of in these times. And I've had to go back to that image in my mind over and over again in this last rather challenging month. So perhaps I'll invite you to join me in a mindfulness practice right now. Since Vietnamese Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh published his classic, The Miracle of Mindfulness, in 1975, so many more have come to reach for this way of being. So let's just take a few more minutes to augment what Michael already introduced to us in our wonderful Time for All Ages. As Michael said, we can often begin with our breath and our presence. But for just a moment, let's come into this space and for a moment be willing to be aware of what we are, where we are, the gift of having a place where we can continue to struggle to be as present as we can be to our highest aspirations, despite a world that often beckons us towards our worst. And in a very specific way, I'm going to invite you to be mindful. I invite you to look down at one of your hands and to really look at it, to really study it, to see what it reveals. Perhaps it reminds you a little bit of your gardening time yesterday because there's just a little dirt stuck under a fingernail. Or perhaps you remember somebody who used to value holding that hand, or somebody who still does. Somebody older or younger, somebody with whom you have a good bond. Perhaps you remember a time of discomfort when your hand was balled into a fist. Let's let all of that go, because that's about the past. And maybe about the future as well, but let's just take a moment and be truly aware and mindful of your hand and all that it is, and the ways that, as Thich Nhat Hanh reminds us, it connects us to our ancestors and is always there as a tool that we can study when we want to be mindful. And as you study your hands and think about just its reality before you, the way it carries your past and your future, but is also present. Once again, you may want to become aware of your breath, of how you are breathing. Our own Suzanne Lofquist didn't have time to record this week, but her practice, she told me, is to be mindful sitting with her cat, who is a very good, quiet, rhythmic breather, and a wonderful reminder to slow down. So if you're partial to cats, you can imagine you're sitting with Suzanne's cat. And let's just take a few more breaths in the gift of shared silence. Thank you. Here is the thing. Mindfulness isn't a trick. It's not a gimmick. It's not a doorway to some supernatural gateway that will take us away from everything that is worrying us. It's not an exit ramp to another world. It is a way that we can be more fully in this world. As Sufi teacher and Duke professor Omid Safi reminds us, to try to use mindfulness only to escape is just to engage in spiritual bypass. But if we want to engage in spiritual presence and awareness, then the research shows us that just 12 minutes a day of some kind of practice can make a huge difference in one's mental and physical health. And it can also make a difference in our collective health as well. The Mindfulness Initiative, which is based in the United Kingdom, has been experimenting with how mindfulness might help us grapple with our chaotic and overwhelming world. They began conducting mindfulness trainings with members of parliament, and a rather high percentage of people took those trainings as a way of reducing the othering that was happening in the legislative process and bringing leaders to a calmer space. Could we all just pray that would happen in our nation, right? They have also published a report called Reconnection, which is a way to bring mindfulness to the climate crisis and suggests that mindfulness could help us reconnect with ourselves and others and nature in a way that would reduce our anxiety so that we could actually make some of the actions that it's not too late to take at this time. Dan Siegel, who has been a long-time scientist engaged in the science of mindfulness, says awareness can help us better relate to one another. In the huge gaps in our world between us and the growing divide among us as neighbors and fellow members of citizens, not only of this nation but of the world, we are watching the rise of extremism and a lack of truthfulness all over the world. Siegel says that mindfulness can be useful in allowing us to weave kindness, empathy, and compassion into our lives to counter our innate survival mechanisms, our fight or flight mechanisms that are so activated in these times. He says, what does connection mean? On one level, it's possible to experience life in an isolated way. We're born into a body, we live in this body, and we will die in this body. In modern society, such an isolated self is often reinforced by a sense of separateness, with a focus on the independent individual who is encouraged in so many ways to go it alone. And yet, the mind instead can be seen as fully embodied, involving all the physiological processes throughout the body, and that it can be relational, involving our interconnections with other people, our natural world, and our planet. As Sharon Salzberg says, meditation and mindfulness are the ultimate mobile devices. You can use them anywhere. There are many paths to mindfulness. A walk in the natural world, some time, as I was reminded by doing my brief drop-in at last night's campout. Very practical, small, and discrete efforts can make a huge difference in bringing our presence, and we as a community will continue to offer new ways to cultivate this among us. As we do so, I believe this is an important part of the work that we can do together as individuals and as a community. Let this be our work together in this time, and may our awareness make us glad.